Hey there, guys.
I'll
Great to
just
be
get
with
my
you again.
producer to press the magic button so we can hear things. There we go.
Looking forward to another big week too.
Hey, John, how's
Hey,
things
Greg.
been?
Hey, good mate. Yeah, absolutely. I've been flying again, doing the aeromedical job. Tom and Hamish went out this week to do a survey at Narromine. They surveyed the tip with the old P4 again, which was good. Easy way to do things these days. So a little bit of work on, but we'd still like a bit more, as I'm sure everyone would. But stuff's happening. Look, a
I
couple
think
of tenders.
everyone
So
would, yeah.
the
Yeah.
business is
You're
like
doing
that.
did you say you're doing some tethered work?
We do a little bit. I just finished a tether procedures. We're hoping that here they're going to change the laws for tether work so you can, fly in some very unusual and complicated places. But they're gonna be pretty strict on what the tether is and how it does it and how it's attached and all that kind of stuff. So, like usual, we just wait and see. Wait for the
Yeah.
next one to come. But anyway, until then, happy landings, blue skies, keep flying.
Yeah. We got some tether discussion in the news a little bit later, but just a couple of things. Happy birthday, first of all, to Lloydie,
Yeah,
who's not
Lloyd.
here today. Let's just click that video in the background. There we go.
Happy
Happy
birthday
birthday.
to
That's
you.
loud.
Happy birthday.
Ouch.
That's very loud. I'll pull that down just a little bit. Happy birthday, Lloyd.
Happy birthday
Dear.
to you.
Yeah, filling in for Lloyd. Let's go back to John. That's enough. Enough birthday. There we go.
Birthday to you.
Stop the video.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday, Lloyd. Good one. And what a great contribution he makes to the show.
Yeah, so Lloyd, for those who don't know, he normally does the chat in the background. He's putting the comments up on the screen, and filling in for him today is Dan from Drone Worship. He's going to be putting some chat comments up on the screen. So
Yeah.
say something insightful. If you don't say anything interesting, don't complain if you don't have your chat come up today.
Good one. I like that.
So moving on from that, I want to briefly, just before we get into the news, talk about YouTube. And here's an interesting insight. Earlier today, there was someone, Dan, who did a live stream about 2 hours ago. And at the end of his live stream, I got the announcement saying that Dan had uploaded a video. So this is something that I'm frustrated about, the way YouTube is doing stuff lately. And smaller channels, they find it really hard to grow because people just don't know about new videos getting uploaded or people going live or whatever the case may be. And that's the wonderful YouTube algorithm. I don't know how that's all going to turn out, but I just wanted to share one of my little frustrations before we got into the news today. But anyway, there you go. So without further ado,
News time.
so right at the top of the news today, we've got CASA have delayed. So this story, we've been having a look at the CASA doing all of their registration stuff. So they have pushed back the registration until 2020, mid-2020, in order to allow for industry consultation on fees. The rules are going to require all drone flyers to get accreditation, or in other words, to watch an online video and then answer a short quiz. But all of this has been pushed back to 2020.
Well, I can tell you right away that the reason it's pushed back is not the consultation. They just
Yep.
haven't got the tech ready. And we heard, the amount, there's going to be 10,000 or so, rushing in to pay the money. Of course, that's what we're dying to do, all pay the money. And they also haven't got how they're going to handle the compliance either. The whole thing's been a disaster, mostly because of the price they've suggested. We're going to have to pay $160 per aircraft. People aren't going to do it. This is going to open up the biggest black market in the UAV industry, and they'll learn. The FAA did too. What were they charging? $5 in America, and
$5.
and they put enough people put together say that was illegal, and then they had to give the money back. So get ready. This is going to be a long, drawn out process here in Australia. So
Yeah.
I know.
We'll
well.
have to wait and see. Going on from that one, our second story today, ESP Copter. And with so many capabilities for obstacle avoidance, the only natural progression for drones would be for them to be hand-controlled. And this particular ESP Copter, it's a programmable Arduino-compatible modular drone that can be customized, including modification of algorithms for obstacle avoidance. So really nice toy there, and certainly a good demonstration of it going and autonomously avoiding obstacles rather than a human doing that.
Yep.
This one came up on Hackaday.
It looks like me trying to do a hover.
Really cool.
Great.
Our next story, commercial. Whoops, I pressed the wrong button too quick. Let me do that one more time. So in terms of a US one, the WASP systems have been delivering support to US Border Patrol. And this is Drone Aviation is the company. They're delivering specialized tethered aerial monitoring and communications platforms, and confirmed they're doing this for US Border Patrol. This was just an interesting photograph. Can we just put that full screen?
What is that thing? Is that a balloon or something?
Yeah, it looked like a balloon. Let's just put that again full screen. There we go.
Yeah, balloon.
It was just something unusual, and I just wanted to share that with people. You know, we're obviously all familiar with your traditional DJI photography or your racing quads and what have you, but that was something unusual.
Yeah, it does. I can remember one time we were doing a contract for this guy, and he said, "Oh, we want a drone to hover there for." Anyway, that's interesting. They got a balloon up. There you go.
Yep. What we're going to do one more quick story, and then we're going to have a pause from our news and go into our guest, do it a little bit, mix it up today. So
great idea.
Our next story, this video surveillance shows a drone delivering contraband to an inmate in, I don't know how to say this, Cuyahoga County Jail in Cleveland, Ohio. So usually everyone's talked about and seen video footage of, drones and going into and out of jails, and they've heard about that before. But seeing what happens when the inmates try to collect the contraband is something that I haven't seen before. And this guy, if he didn't trip over that thing in the middle, it would have probably been successful.
You got to send me a link to that one. I know someone who wants to look at that.
Yeah. So anyway, let's leave that one there. And what we're going to do right now, we're going to go and skip through the to our guest. And let me go and press that button right there.
Hey!
And I should have prepared that before. It's still rendering it on my computer. There we go. Mark, how you doing?
Hey, not too bad. Not too bad. It's been a while.
Yeah, welcome. Look, welcome back. It's been a long time. The last time we spoke to you, you were doing leaf blowing with drone parts.
Oh yeah, that thing still works well.
Combining
I use it almost every week.
Combining gardening and drones is something unusual. Let's just play that video, the first clip that I got in the background while we chat.
Oh yeah.
So there's the leaf blower that we saw last time.
Yep. One of these days I'll upgrade that thing to 6S.
So
it's completely safe, as you can see.
Oh, completely safe to have that prop in the background there.
Yep. I put a dead man switch on it now at least, so it's a bit safer.
Yeah. And then you've been doing some other stuff, a little bit hot there. You've been doing some other stuff that I've seen in your recent clips as well.
Oh yeah, little trip to Switzerland. That's the best kind of first-person view you can have. Batteries don't last very long though.
That was good.
Yeah, that was awesome. Yeah.
That was a fun day.
So since then, you're obviously having fun outdoors and having a lot of fun with your drone parts and whatnot, but recently you've been playing with the DJI FPV system.
Yeah, I did a build video of the new Impulse RC Apex frame. They've got a compatible frame for the DJI system, so I happened to get my hands on one pre-release of those, and So I grabbed the DJI system, and I'd flown it a couple of times in the park. A couple of friends of mine had it already, and it was good enough that I thought, damn it, I'll shell out the money. I mean, this is the FPV experience that a lot of us oldies wanted back when we got into the game, which was just to have a really beautiful view of everything, go up high and just look at stuff, Then there was all this freestyle and racing and and people trying to outdo each other. But all we wanted in the early days was a really nice picture, good range, reliable link, and so this system, it ticks a lot of those boxes. It's got some drawbacks, but we'll get into that later, I suppose.
Yeah, let's just have a look. So you've got a video that you did where you're building up the Apex and the DJI system.
Yep.
Let's just chuck that
First
up.
build video I've done in 7 years. I never bothered to make a build video.
Yeah, I've sped it up quite significantly. And people who do want to get into the DJI FPV system, this is the abbreviated version. But do check out Mark's channel for the complete clip. The
long and boring rambly me clip. You can watch it at 2 times speed.
Oh, look, it was great to watch. I enjoyed it.
Alright then, so here we go. This was literally my first flight with this.
What was the build time, Mark?
Probably about 5 or 6 hours, maybe a little bit longer. But I really took my time with it. I don't rush builds, and I had to take my time and make sure I got everything right. I had to make sure, figure out how everything fit. So if I had to build another one exactly the same with the same equipment, it would probably be something like 2 or 3 hours. I could just bang it out. There's always the first build of a new frame and a new flight controller and a new system. That you just got to figure out wire lengths and what goes to what.
How did you rate it? How did you rate it against similar products?
Well, there aren't any similar products. That's the thing.
Right.
There's the Phantom stuff and the Mavic stuff, and I've got my Mavic and I love my Mavic. But this is for FPV, and it's the first of its kind. So it's a very solid system. Like they've done a lot of things really well. I'm not a huge fan of the way the video degrades when you start to go to the edge of reception. It drops frames and the latency increases, which makes it kind of hard to fly proximity and things. But it's really, really, really cool overall.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the question, how is your range when you're flying through buildings and concrete areas versus analog on 200 milliwatts or higher?
It's significantly better, much, much better than analog. But you will get that breakup and that extended latency and those dropped frames. So see here we're flying in the video. I never usually fly there with analog. There's a bit of a big fuzz if I fly there. So I was deliberately trying to go a few places where I knew it would test the system out, and I'd normally get a burst of static or something like that. And it performs very, very well. Yeah.
So one of those 2 frames, the biggest frame in the main part of the screen, is that the recorded or is that the transmitted?
No, the bigger one's the recorded and the smaller one's the transmitted. And I didn't scale the transmitted at all. So you get 720p in your goggles. Mm-hmm. I had it in 16:9 for this, but you can run it in 4:3 as well, which gives you more at the top and bottom, but crops the sides a bit. You get a bit of black on the sides. Doesn't actually crop it, it actually shows you more. But I just flew this in 16:9. And there's different modes. You can put it in high quality mode with more latency. There's also a thing called focus mode where you can get more bandwidth allocated to the center of the picture. So the edges are a bit more blurry, but the center is a little bit sharper. So you can play around with those options and see what works for you.
Yeah. I'm just reading Zebmeter saying he hears that digital versus analog is worse. Your comments, digital versus analog?
It depends, is the answer. I don't know if this is going to be the final solution for racing, where latency is king and you must always be able to see, and it must be as low latency as possible. This variable latency in this is different. But the picture quality in comparison, you go back to analog after flying this system and you're like, ugh, what? So it's it just depends what you're after. There's no one is better than the other. Well, actually, no, digital is better than analog, basically. But for me,
the one thing that for me, I was looking at this when it was first being announced and released, and they were talking about the latency in terms of milliseconds, and I calculated that, and it was less than 1 frame at 30 frames per second. Obviously, you might sometimes be doing 60, whatever.
We're always doing 60 minimum. Yeah.
You're always doing 60, yeah. So
60 or 50
one or
if you're
two
in
frames.
PAL.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah,
just
but it makes a
thinking,
difference.
How do you fix that, though, in terms of getting that latency down? And I have a look at some of the other video stuff that people do. And for example, you've got Skype. Skype uses a system where they dynamically scale the resolution and they dynamically change the resolution on the fly. Is that what DJI is doing, or how are they?
It is in a way. It's you can see it pixelates more when the signal's degrading, so everything gets blurry. You get that JPEG sort of effect. So it degrades the signal first, but the system's quite clever. It has the ability to request packets being resent from your goggles, and so if it's lost a packet, it can actually ask for it to be resent, and if it's a timely thing to do, it'll resend it and things like that. So they've done a lot of things very cleverly. It's version 1 as well. It's like V1.0000. So people who expect the earth of this, it's not going to happen. It's a new product. Give it until V2, wait a year. There's a lot they can do with software upgrades, because there's a lot of little things that they've not gotten right. Like the OSD doesn't show nearly enough information for most FPV people. The goggles are a terrible fit on most people's faces in the West. Don't know who they modeled the goggles on, some moon-faced assassin of joy over in China, I suppose, but they have light leaking in the sides. You can see the world behind you reflected. It's really distracting. Actually, I'm going to sort of digress here, but I just printed these. These are like literally fresh off the 3D printer before I came on the show, and they're little plastic shims.
Just a side topic, the internet today, that is so unclear looking at both you and also John. I don't know our lovely internet. This is now NBN, so everyone said it was going to be better, but it's not. Anyway.
Oh, yeah, I do look a bit pixelated over there, don't I? That's all right. See, that's what happens to the DJI system when it gets behind trees and things. But these little shims, I'm going to try these on the goggles to actually push out the foam to actually cover those light leaks. So that'll be an interesting experiment that I'm going to get onto later today.
Okay.
But it was a very easy build. It was very tight. It all came together, plug and play. DJI, again, they screwed up. They used really shitty wire on their little 7-pin connector, which melts. Everyone's been using silicon wire for like years in this hobby, and it doesn't melt, and it's just nice to work with. They used the really crappy stuff. There's just little things that they need to fix, and the amount they charge you for those spares is horrendous as well. But, it's a plug-and-play system. It works out of the box really well for what it does. You get a great picture. It's a really nice FPV experience if that's what you're after, with that immersion and the goggles and just cruising around looking at stuff. For racing, I don't think anyone would seriously race with it yet. But we'll see. Time will tell, because they can always improve this stuff through firmware upgrades.
I'm just seeing Zebmeet in the chat saying melts ? Just explain that one more time.
When you solder a wire, it gets hot. And in the old days, we had some sort of PVC insulation on the wires. And then, they've used really horrible wire, basically. It's bad insulation. It just melts.
So that's during build as opposed to during flight. Okay,
during
just
flight.
making sure. Okay.
Yeah. But it's the little things, when you've been in the hobby for a while that make this difference between something that's nice to work on and something that you just go, oh, for God's sake. Now I have to cut that off again and strip it again because it's melted and exposed wire and blah, blah, blah. So, that's your melts. Hasn't melted in flight yet. Gets hot.
Yeah.
Does get hot.
I got two things. I got Zebmeet asking about lag again, and the way I'd like to ask you about that is you've recently been testing something else. Now, I don't expect you to say things you can't say, but what can you say, and what can you tell us about some other mythical system?
Some other things, magical systems. I think it's known that I've got my hands on this. There's a new system coming out from Fat Shark, which is a digital FPV system called Bitefrost. And I've been lucky enough to be sent a beta test version of that. And I literally, this morning, like an hour ago, flew it for the first time, got it into a quad. And Chad and I actually tested this last year. We tested a really early prototype when the guy who runs Fat Shark came to Brisbane for a visit because we know him. And we were like, this is good. You should develop this. You know, we can fly with this. This is the digital that we always wanted. Bear in mind, this is before DJI, you know, were on the scene. So DJI then released theirs, and Fat Shark were a couple of months away from releasing theirs, and they went, oh, we better make an announcement. So then it appeared again, digital's coming from Fat Shark too, by the way, but we're going to work on it for another couple of months because there's some things we want to improve because DJI is beating us in a couple of areas. So they've delayed the release of that so they can improve it. I don't think it's very far off. It looks like a pretty mature product to me. So I flew that this morning, and that is designed for the existing user base. There's very low latency. There's no variable latency. And the way the picture degrades is you get these little tiny blocks of static, and it's like a digital version of analog static is the best way I can describe it. It degrades very gracefully and comes back instantly. So I find that a much better way to fly FPV if you're flying fast proximity or racing and that sort of thing. But it's very early days, you know, like I've got to put this system through its paces, and there's not as much resolution in our cameras, in our goggles, as the DJI goggles. So we're going to need better goggles to take full advantage of this system. But yeah, it's really promising. So yeah, like literally this morning, I just flew it an hour before coming on the show, and it was good. I was a happy chappy. So that'll be very interesting to see how these two products place themselves and compete in the market, because they're both very easy to install, and they both work really well. So they're just probably going to fulfill slightly different needs and different niches. So yeah, that's interesting times ahead. I'm going to go to the park after this and flog the crap out of it, and maybe I'll try and get a comparison video up at some stage. If no control latency on that one. I can see there's a question. I don't know
because
if you're
your control
about
channel will still be separate to your vision, yeah?
Exactly, yeah. With the Fat Shark system, it's just a different VTX and camera. So you use the same control system as you're using before. You can use it with Crossfire. You can use it with FreeSky or whatever. The DJI system doesn't seem to have any control latency either. It just uses S-Bus. That's not variable. It's just the image that you get that latency in. And their radio is actually reasonably nice. You know, it feels okay in your hands. It's a solid package. Not much else to say about it. The gimbals don't suck once you tighten them up. They're super loose when you get them. Some people like loose gimbals, but those guys are weird. So but the new system's just a standalone VTX and camera. So you've got a ground station with a recorder in it, and then you just use an HDMI cable to plug it into your goggles. Job done. Okay. Works really well. Yeah.
So just final question. I know that one of the two products you've just mentioned is still in beta, prototype, etc. But where would you be for both non-racing, where your latency is a concern, but not your primary concern? If you're not doing the high-speed stuff, where would you be? Which of the two products?
It depends what you've got. If you've already got a fleet of quads that are hooked up for long-range FPV and you want better pictures, then your Fat Shark thing is the one you're going to go for. It'll be cheaper, and you've already got a radio and you've already got all of the stuff. If you're just getting into it and you just want the nicest picture and you want a plug-and-play system where you've got radio, goggles, everything, you know, just sort of in one go, and you plug it all together, then the DJI system is like a really solid offering as well. So it's hard to compare them at this stage. I don't think it would be fair to compare them. One's a beta product and one's a 1.0 brand new. Yeah. But I do think they fill slightly different niches in the hobby market. I think the DJI system is going to have its own growing user base as time goes by, of maybe more casual FPVers and people getting into the hobby that way. But the serious racers, I don't think they're going to accept it anytime soon, or the serious top pilot, whatever, blah, 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 so they want to call themselves. Me, I'm just happy to have a really nice picture and go and fly, and I just want something that works. I mean, I can fly reasonably well, but I'm keen to try out all this stuff because it's all toys and we love our toys. That's why we do this. So, more power to the industry if there's some competition,
Yeah, I said that was my last question, but I reserved the right to add one more.
You're the boss.
What's the deal with flying around other people who are on analog in terms of your interference to them and vice versa?
Yeah. Well, we haven't tested that yet with the Fat Shark system. That's one of the things we're going to do today. But it's one of the things that Chad and I did last year. Actually, that was the whole point of that test, and it played very nicely with the analog stuff. It's on a similar power level, same channels, same frequencies, similar bandwidth. So I think it'll play quite nicely. DJI plays less nicely because the goggles actually transmit on 5.8 as well. So you don't want to be flying your analog rig next to some dude who's got the DJI face hugger, cow's udder, ant face goggles on them next to you, because they will start smashing your signal as soon as you fly out. So they've got to sit like 5 or 10 meters away. Otherwise, you get interference. So, DJI is going to be sitting in the naughty corner for a while. They'll be their own little thing. And the other annoying thing they've done is they've selected 8 channels, and they've just arbitrarily picked random frequencies that aren't the same as the frequencies that have ever been used in the last 10 years, which is quite frustrating. They could have followed a standard. They decided, no, we DJI, we do whatever the fuck we want. Pardon my French. They're like the Apple of the drone world. So, they're a lock-in vendor. You've got to activate your product with them. You've got to activate your goggles, radio, and air unit with this FPV system. It's got to dial home to China, send your details to them, and then they've got to approve which zone of the world you're in, and then they power limit you or not, although there's easy ways around that. You just put a simple text file on the memory card to fool it into thinking you're in the States. But it's things like that are just like, you don't have full control over the equipment, which is what you do when you're flying the traditional stuff. So again, it's that different market. Some people will love the Apple and some people want their PCs.
I'm curious if you try and use that control system. So the DJI remote is doing control. Are they doing no-fly zones with that?
No, because there's no GPS. There's no GPS built into the system at all. You can put GPS on your quad, but it's still running Betaflight. It still talks to a traditional FPV flight controller and ESC stack. So all it does is it acts as a VTX and also as a radio receiver if you want. You can use your own receiver and just ignore their radio completely. So you can just buy the air unit and the goggles, and that'll work fine. But you get limited telemetry through the goggles. You only get battery voltage and time in the air. You don't get current, you don't get milliamp draw, you don't get GPS coordinates, you don't get return to home arrow or anything like that. So this is all stuff they can add with software updates. Hopefully they will, because otherwise it's pretty useless for long range. But it's V1, so we'll see.
Yeah. Okay, look, it was great chatting to you, Mark. Have you got anything, John, for Mark?
No, look, I was just really interested in your thoughts, and thinking about the analog and digital stuff. Mark, do you think that analog technology saw its full, the extent of what's possible with it, or do you think underneath there's more analog? I mean, I in particular in what we're doing, I mean, I know we all went to digital because of telecommunications and mobile phones and so forth, but for us, in our world, analog still's got a lot of things going for it, and I don't think we've done all we can with it.
Yeah, it's an interesting question.
Been around for a long while.
one of the base problems with the analog stuff is resolution, of course. You can't send more than a certain picture size, but I think the technology in the 7 years I've been flying has improved enormously. Like the transmitters are better, but also the receiver modules are better. Like now you've got the rapid fire, and there's a TBS product which does a very similar thing, which has just come out. And those receiver modules are amazing. They are allowing us to fly places that we would never have been able to fly before, because it's reconstructing the signal from a diversity thing. It's reconstructing it line by line. and so your static almost disappears. It's quite amazing. So I think they've really squeezed pretty close to what they can out of analog video. The cameras have gotten better, of course, as well, but they're still limited to that PAL or NTSC resolution. So,
but there's no reason why they couldn't have higher bandwidth. Just like, for example, on traditional Wi-Fi, they're using wider bandwidth channels. Why couldn't you do analog if the government was prepared to allocate frequency ranges with wider bandwidth?
I don't know. I don't know enough about the analog video transmission standards to sort of speak to that without injecting a lot of guesswork in there.
Yeah.
My understanding's always been that there's a limited amount of stuff that you can send, and once you're using a certain amount of bandwidth for picture, another subcarrier for color, and then the way it puts all of the stuff together is sort of boxed. But the regulators as well, like ACMA, don't like analog at all. They're quite happy for you to go to 2 watts if you're using digital telemetry, but technically 25 milliwatts for analog signals, video, that's what they've always said, except for the times when they've said it's considered telemetry and you can go to a watt. They don't agree with themselves. I've got an old letter somewhere where they fully acknowledge that we can fly FPV with whatever power we want. But I mean, it's always this ongoing debate. But officially, regulatory-wise, they're going to be a lot harsher on analog stuff because it doesn't play nicely with digital, and most of the stuff that's flying around the spectrum these days is digital. So digital plays nicely with digital. Analog stuff tends to just stomp in and do its thing. So I don't know. I don't think there's a lot more to be gotten out of it at this stage. Digital's always been the holy grail as far as I'm concerned. This new Fat Shark system looks really nice in terms of being digital, but also flying much more like we're used to with analog. Flies differently to the DJI stuff.
Well, I just thought I'd throw it up there because I felt it's still available, but of course, I understand too when you're flying beside people, you're always going to have and flying with friends, you're always going to have better stuff with digital. So anyway, just to throw it in.
No, fair enough. Yeah.
So what I'd like to do next, I'm going to go and move on to FPV Korner and share some FPV video footage. Oh, you want to share your toy? Let's just
it's top secret.
Let's have a look at that.
Yeah. That's the that's the Fat Shark one. It's just another board on the top there. Can't really see it. And that's the digital one. That's the box in the back. Get out of the way. Yeah, that just sits in the back there, but you can see that on my build video anyway. That's all I had to offer.
What were the prices again?
Toys here.
What were the dollars, mate?
DJI's FPV systems, if you want the radio as well, will set you back about 1,500 Australian for everything, goggles, radio, and unit. No idea what the Fat Shark system's going to retail for, but given that it's just a VTX and camera, it'll be significantly less. And probably, they have one ground station and you don't need a second ground station. So the subsequent cameras for DJI are like about $300 a pop, which is a bit dear. But I mean, it's a very cheap hobby overall. When you consider it, a lot of the FPV hobby is notoriously tight-assed, unbelievably so. It just drives me up the wall, and then people bitch when manufacturers go, well, we're going out of business. It's because, the hobby community has driven them out of business by scraping to the bottom. So I think this stuff is still really cheap. I can't see the Fat Shark stuff being overly expensive.
No, I agree.
Yeah, it'll be a brave new world. The DJI market, like the Phantom market and the Mavic market and stuff, like people just accept this is what it costs. It just works. But FPV people, my God. Oh no, $25 for a motor is too much. Should be 20. For crying out loud. They hand wind those bloody things in China, give them some money. Well, they don't hand wind them, but there's a lot of manual processes involved.
Yeah, understood.
Anyway, that's my rant.
Well, no, we're used to that kind of thing. We have become like that all the time, and wanting less. And then of course, pushing manufacturers to skimp on the quality is what I don't like. You know, I'm all for getting, you know, looking at a $3 motor. I'm just not going to fly a $3 motor. The maths doesn't work out to me. You know.
No, because it breaks, you crash, you end up buying everything again, and then you buy the good stuff in the end because you got the shits with the cheap stuff, and you should have just bought it in the first place. You would have saved all that money and pain and frustration. That's why I always tell people getting into this hobby, just spend a little bit more, buy some good gear, don't skimp on this, and this, and you'll be fine. You know, you'll have a much nicer experience.
Well, you can reuse motors, and all these things are reusable in new frames, you know, and that sort of thing too. So, that's my point
hobby,
too.
Oh, this hobby runs on hype. You know, there's a new motor coming out next week. We have to buy it. Oh, it's better than the old motor. Is it? Is it really? Or are you just justifying the fact that you shelled out another $150 on new motors? Yeah, and it's pretty much exactly the same because none of the technology has changed in about 2 years. Like it's plateaued. There was this period of massive improvement, and they've just sort of hit this plateau, and it's been there ever since. You know, that we got the most performance out of these vehicles that we can, and just squeezing a tiny bit here and there is kind of sort of pointless, you know. Yeah. But the whole hobby runs on hype and ego, and that's why I've taken a bit of a step back from it all in the last couple of years. Just got to me, so you know, it's supposed to be fun. That's the bottom line. We fly because we love flying, and it's fun.
I reckon that's what we know that, for sure.
Speaking of fun and flying, I think we're going to go to FPV Korner now. We'll go and put that video up. Mark, you want to stick around and just have a look at some of this? And
sure.
Thereafter, I'll let you go. And maybe you want to jump into the chat room. There's a couple of questions from Zeb Meat. He was asking some things about range and so on. So jump in the chat room, have a chat with him. But in the meantime, let's look at FPV Korner.
Cool.
So this week we've got a video from, this is Wags Outback, FPV Freedom, camping outback in Western Australia. He's taken his custom, it's a Quaddy 300, mounted on there. He's got an FDR X3000 camera on top, lots of space to fly, no people, no nothing. So he's saying he's happy to go and do whatever he wants out there. Have you done much outback flying? Are you still there, Mark?
Didn't you?
I'm still here.
Have you done much outback flying yourself? Oh, sorry, my bad. Reasonable amount over the years. Flown in some pretty nifty places. I'd love to get out and do some more. I'd love to get out to WA and do like a road trip down through the Kimberley and fly some of those locations because they're amazing. I mean, WA is just beautiful. I was there in January and did some flights around the really tall trees down at Pemberton and out on the beaches there. There's some nice video in this. Yeah.
Yeah, I've flown, the last places I flew was in Switzerland over a gigantic glacier. That was pretty cool as well.
Yeah, I remember seeing that video. Very nice.
Yeah, we have so many good places to fly in this country. We just don't have mountains. We got endless beaches and some beautiful outback.
So Nightbot is putting your channel link in the text there. So do go and check out Mark's channel.
Thank you very much. Yes, I don't post a lot of stuff these days, but what I do post is generally amusing in some way. So have a look at my favourites and enjoy. Been doing this for far too long. But these videos like this just make me want to go and fly in places like this again as well. It's great.
Yeah, well, certainly thanks to Greg Hilton who puts this together every week. Beautiful footage. But I'm just remembering back, how much of an influence do you think where we met many years ago, how much do you think that was an influence on your interest in this hobby?
Oh, well, I've always been a nerd like you. I think we're all nerds at heart. I wasn't even dreaming of anything like this back then, but of course we loved little remote control cars and things, didn't we? So went through a phase with those, and as soon as I had a little model helicopter because they were sort of little fun toys. And then I discovered, a friend of mine sent me an FPV video by a guy called David Vinderstall, who's like a Swedish guy. He's one of the granddaddies of this stuff. He's flying this tricopter through a forest and under a bridge and doing all this stuff that he just couldn't do line of sight, and it looked amazing. And so I looked into it and discovered it wasn't nearly as expensive or difficult as I thought it was going to be to do, and I was just hooked because I'd already been putting little cameras on my little helicopter and going up and hovering and doing some extreme hovering, and I just, to be able to put on a pair of goggles and be in the quad, you don't have to worry about orientation. You're always flying forwards. You're like a little bird up in the sky, little superhero flying over trees and stuff. Like that was it. I was hooked. That's why it's been such a passion over the years for me. You know, and I think we have a general mindset that it appeals to a nerdy, technical, geeky mindset, and anyone who still retains sort of childish delight in doing cool stuff. More boys than girls, because that's just how it works with little flying machines. But I
always love the building thing too. You know, for me, building something that would fly, that's where in my nerdy background, you know, to actually put something together with my own hands that could defy gravity goes back to, you know, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years old. I used to throw my toys in the air to see if they'd fly, you know. And I'm 60. It never left me, you know. If I've got something, I'll see if I can make it fly. And let's face it, all it needs is you know, power. You can make anything fly. Make a house fly. And I, you know, there's always that. I think that is in our psyche. You know, and a lot of people dream. I used to sit on a chair when I was a kid and wish it to hover in the room. You know, I'd close my eyes and try and make it levitate in the room. So, well, man, what's FPV? That's FPV. You know, we've finally got there. We can sit there and we can just, you know, by sitting down, explore this this whole mental mind journey of being able to fly. And I think, you know, again, you said it a couple of times today, man, all we really want to do is just get high. You know, we want to fly. You know, that's what it is.
I think some of it comes back from the old science fiction and space stuff that we used to watch too, like Star Wars and things, and that, you know, like speeder bikes through the forest on Endor. I mean, when I flew in Pemberton in WA at the start of the year, that was like I was flying a speeder bike on Endor. You know, you're like in this three-dimensional space with these giant tall trees that are like 60 meters tall. There's huge amounts of space between them, no scraggle branches at all. They just go straight up, and you're just zooming through these trees, and it's just, I don't know, it was really cool to be able to do that stuff.
I'm just having a look. There's someone who sent me a message, not in the chat room, saying that's what happened to me when I wanted to build the world's smallest flying DeLorean and nobody had done it. So, yeah, a lot of fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
People made all sorts of things fly.
Yeah, just before we go, Mark and I used to work at Dick Smith Electronics, for those who don't know the history. And Dick Smith Electronics, for those not in Australia, is kind of the equivalent of Radio Shack, I guess, over in the US.
Yeah, was back in the day. Then it turned into a Best Buy or something.
Yeah, when Woolworths bought it, that was the end. But anyway, look, it's been good talking to you. So thank you very much. Stay in the chat. Say hello to a few people
to catch
there.
Up.
And
mute me because I'll type and it's really loud. And if you want me, just unmute me.
Yeah,
okay,
good on you.
Done.
Good on you, Mark. Great to have you on board, mate.
Cheers. It's really good to see you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great contribution.
Okay. I'm going to skip around a little bit on the stories today. We're going to go and have a couple more news stories. So I'm going to go to 1.06. We're going to have a look at that one next. This is a video clip of a new drone. And, let's put that up on the screen. So this Icelandic company, Fly Glidey, has developed a drone in the shape of a bird, which caught the attention of some US investors during US Vice President Mike Pence's recent visit to Iceland. The drone was developed in cooperation with Reykjavik University, Chalmers University of Technology in Sweden, and Iowa State University. Representatives from the US defense and security industry were especially interested in the drone when they found that it was going to have crapping capabilities. I'm kidding.
I love it. I love it.
This is just so hilarious. I just had to share this as soon as I saw it.
Well, of course, those of you that are into aerospace will know that's classified as an ornithopter. Of course,
An ornithopter.
And they've been around for a long while. You know, before we had fixed wing flying, we were trying to copy birds from the beginning. So that looks like a great gadget, and that technology, if you think about the application of it, will change. I mean, we've seen on movies and so videos of beetles and moths, drones doing all the spying. You know, wow, it's hard to. I mean, if a bird that drone was flying around the airport, who would say anything? You know what?
I did have another story that I didn't make the final cut of the news today about someone doing researches and dissecting moths to understand their brains of how they interpret what's coming in and how they send that back out.
A moth has a brain? I didn't know a moth had it. Well, it probably obviously has some kind of brain, but interpreting. Well, you know, the wings have been copied, and the skeletal, the actual design and the materials have been looked at very closely for all sorts of things. But again, you know, I wonder if the regulators are thinking about that thing. We're going to have robotic birds flying around. We're not going to know who's flying it, where it is, or even be able to determine if it is a bird or not. You know, that's something, isn't it?
Yeah. A quick little continuation from last week's show. This is 1.07. The Linux Foundation are going to host open source project for drone aviation interoperability. So basically they're going to say, hey, we need to work out how do we build a trusted, secure and scalable interoperability platform between different suppliers to advance safe and equitable and efficient drone operations, etc., etc., etc. But this is kind of where we were talking about last week of software-defined drones, of that kind of how do we get to the next layer and say, hey, the hardware's there, but we've got this other layer in between. I think that's where that'll eventually end up going.
I think let's have a look at it.
There is no video on it. This is just some words. So the Linux Foundation, the people who invented Linux, they're going in that direction, and I think that's where it's going to end up. No video for that, just the commentary.
Okay. Yeah, look. All of the big players are going to have some venture capital into the UAS industry for sure. I mean, you know, builds up the. So call me a skeptic, whatever. How they might get themselves involved in aerospace is another question. You know, it's partnerships, isn't it? Really.
Yeah. And next on the list, we've got something that I think's rather unique. Maybe the single biggest factor in the growth of drones from commercial and for this expensive hobby. I'm going to start that again. Maybe the single biggest factor in the growth of drones from a controversial, expensive hobby into a mundane example of consumer electronics is the incredible rate at which these flying cameras became easier to operate. That was it wasn't so big and long when I wrote it. But look at what they're doing with it. They're now using the same technology, iPad control, to control these bobcats, and it's looking pretty good. This is kind of maybe the big version of what DJI was doing with their recent toy, their RoboMaster.
I bet it's got a Pixhawk in it. I bet it does.
Probably.
Why wouldn't you? Look at it. You can do. I mean, there's
the iPad.
Yeah, the iPad thing's just a gimmick part of it anyway.
Well, it's not really, because they deliberately put the iPad in front of people who've never had experience in driving these things before and just saying, how easy is it to do it? Whereas you've got to be licensed to do it in the real world.
Well, I suppose too, if you hand someone a remote controller, they look at it and go, "Yeah, what do I do?" Whereas on the iPad, you got a screen that says, "Want to move forward? Want to move back?" You can have it.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy. So I get that part of it, but I'm always interested in the controller. The flight controller or whatever's actually doing the work.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense.
I got a question from Dan that disappeared before I had a chance to read it, but let me move on.
Hey, I want to make a shout out. I've got a new listener today. One of my guys, Paul, is listening in. He's a builder. He builds all sorts of fantastic things. He builds right up to 1,200 mil octocopters with great stuff. He came out of radio control cars as well. So g'day, Paul. Say g'day. Welcome. Subscribe. Like the show. We always like new people coming on board and checking out the show.
Yeah, Dan was just saying, yeah, exactly, RG-copter and APM driven. So our next story, I mentioned before, you were talking about tethering, and certainly this week there's a story about that. Singapore startup Volaricious has launched their product called V-Line, a tether system designed to keep DJI's Mavic 2 drones in the air indefinitely. The tether box weighs about 15 kilos, so reasonably portable. Been designed to work with the Mavic 2 series, and they've got their own tension system, etc., to make that work.
Cost?
Do you think cost? Let me go and see. I tell you what, let me see. No,
they got a lot of zeros on them. Those things, those boxes. I tell you, we had a look at a couple of them. One from Israel, and they actually came out to Australia, and we took it out to a prison facility, and flew it. And what can I say? It was a box, had a wire, and it sent electricity up the wire, and that was it. I wasn't terribly impressed. There was no real software integration, nothing really smart. It was just a really pretty box with a wire, and the wire was good, but you can buy that off the shelf.
Would you like the price?
Yeah, go for it. I won't be surprised at all. Not
US
at all.
dollars. V-Line will be available starting in November from various DJI enterprise dealers, retailing for US $7,900.
Oh, that's cheap. That's cheap. So I haven't seen anything under 25, a pretty box like that. So anyway, yeah, obviously there's room in the market. You can build a cheap box. I don't want to sound like I'm belittling all of that tech, but I'm going to have a go and look at that one because I think there's a use case for it. But I think they need to be smarter. I think the first thing that happened is we went out in the wind to try this thing, and once there's a bit of wind blowing, man, it all comes apart. The tether system just is over, and particularly if you're flying a Mavic 2. We were flying an Inspire and one with a tether on it, and that thing will handle a little bit of wind. Hasn't got a very steady hover on it anyway. But once the wind got up and the tether starts blowing around everywhere, and just dust getting into the box, and people don't go out, and they look great in the store. 25 grand looks great in the store. You get it out there and cook the airplane up and take it up to 30 meters or 40 meters, and it frighten the life out of you. Until you use it. Anyway, just throwing it out there.
Absolutely. I'm going to skip a couple of stories. Go to number 11, Gatwick. So, case is closed. The people who've been doing the Gatwick investigation, they've now closed their case, spent roughly £1 million on the investigation, and they have failed to charge anyone. But the report that they published indicates, and turning over my page because I've gone out of order, I can't do it the normal way when I go rogue like this. It indicates that they believe that people with detailed knowledge of Gatwick used 2 drones to shut down the airport for 30 hours. So they couldn't find anyone. They're basically saying, well, we couldn't find anyone because, well, they knew how to hide themselves. It's a shame. And you're muted.
And so that just follows on with, this is the classic Gatwick story, is it? Or was that Heathrow?
The classic. No, this is the Gatwick, yeah.
The classic Gatwick one. A press won't let go of it, of course. So, I just think it's going to be flogged to death, that one. And we still don't know whether there is even an aircraft there, do we?
Well, they're saying that they were someone that knew the airport, and there was always rumours that it was someone who was an airport employee because the airport was being sold and they didn't like the idea of that, and it was a bit of a malicious one.
All you've got to do is to ring up and say, "Oh, I saw a drone flying on the other side of Gatwick Airport." Make one phone call, and then they'll close it. And I mean, and then if someone sees a plastic bag, they'll close it. Anyway, call me another Call me a skeptic again.
You're a skeptic.
I am. Yeah.
I got 3 more quick ones. Nelson Mann in New Zealand he shot down a real estate agent's drone and has had charges against him dropped. The interesting thing about that is that the judge basically said, was he on his own property when he shot? Yes, he was. Was he allowed to shoot a gun from his own property? Yes, he was. The fact that the drone was above his neighbour's property at the time is kind of like, well, he just ignored it and he had the charges dismissed. I think this is a really bad precedent to set, especially when you understand it's an aircraft, it's aviation, and people are shooting at aircraft. It's a bad precedent to set. And what I'm really more annoyed about is the fact that the police and the aviation regulator didn't bring charges under aviation law. They only brought charges under the criminal law. And there was nothing they could get him under that.
This is exactly what they wanted to do, man. They wanted to test it in court to see what happens. This is exactly what we need. And until it goes to court, the same with privacy. Here's another one. If you shoot a gun, and I don't know how this is going to be tested. Imagine how far this would go. If you shoot a gun from your property over someone else's property in the air, are you firing a projectile into the air? Maybe it's got a camera in it. I don't know. A bullet with a camera. Who knows what it is? Are you actually sending your property over someone else's property? Are you allowed to do that? I don't know enough about what the gun laws are, but shooting down an aircraft that's over over their own land, that has to be one that stopped. I mean, what we're going to see, here's what I believe will happen. If they don't put a sort of a stop on this, then everyone will start shooting down drones, right? And to the point where all of a sudden, whether it takes that long, someone shoots down a medical drone or something else that was doing some important work one day, then all of a sudden it's going to be stopped again. But the reason that our regulator says quite firmly, you cannot shoot down an aircraft. And you can't, the truth is you can't fire a laser at a drone in the air. A drone is just an aircraft. You can't interfere with an aircraft. It's actually federal law.
But that's my point. The aviation authorities in New Zealand refuse to go and prosecute under the law that they control, which is exactly the same as what's happened in Australia. We've had multiple cases in Australia where CASA said, no, we're not interested. The police can go and sort that out.
Yeah,
the police didn't want to bring any charges under those laws either over here. So same kind of thing. And bad precedent.
We're in early days, mate. And it's the same thing. There's still no privacy stuff been really gotten into yet. That's going to go a long way. We've got all that in front of us, and I'm not looking forward to it. I'm sick of it already, and the fact that that has to happen. Someone's got to go and get a gun and shoot down someone's property over their house.
But this guy was cool. This was a real estate agent who had permission to fly over the neighbour's property. Now, I know that you and I know that when you fly for a job, you're going to notify the neighbours because it prevents those kind of problems. But having said that, the law doesn't say you have to. If you're flying over property with consent, no one under any circumstances should be shooting that aircraft down.
No. Well, would they shoot it if he was in a helicopter using a DSLR camera from a helicopter? Would you shoot it down? How would that play out in court differently if you shot down a helicopter with 2 people in it?
Yeah, bad precedent.
So the law's there. And people are going to say, oh, that's a stupid comparison. Not in aviation law, it's not. It doesn't work that way.
So I've got 2 stories left. Thumbing. So people have long debated about how you control a drone. And there are those that say they want to be pinchers and use a pinch grip on the controller, and those that say they want to use a thumb grip on the controller. Well, we've got a solution to that. So this difference of opinion has been solved by Airy, who's created a product that could end the dispute. Using these injected molded thumb caps, pilots can improve control using their thumbs only. No comment?
I'm just looking at it and I'm thinking, yeah, that's right. I mean, I don't know. This looks like another really nice coloured thing that you can screw onto the end of the sticks. I don't know.
I've got Mark there. I've got Mark there still in the green room in the background. Mark, what do you think?
Go, Mark.
I started off with my thumbs and it was pretty shaky. And then I got those big thumbbrellas, you know, with those big paddles that go on the end of the sticks, and they were great.
I got
and then
them
I switched
as well.
to pinching. When I switched to pinching, when I realised that you just don't have the same control with your thumbs as you can with pinching. Took me 2 goes to switch over. First time I failed and gave up. About 30 packs and you can switch. But I mean, some of the best pilots in the world, Thomas Pittmater is a thumb flyer. He's actually got divots in his thumb from where his stick goes because he flies so much. It actually locates into these holes, the sharp pointy bits in his thumb. It's a horses for courses. It's a mode 1, mode 2 argument.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know.
I fly
pinching.
mode 1. Yeah, exactly.
Mode 1, bloody weirdo.
Well, if you know what, if you, in terms of mode 1, if you're flying RC aircraft, mode 1 makes perfect sense.
If you've come from RC aircraft, you're generally going to fly mode 1.
Not just because we the early days we only had rudder and elevator in 2 channels, you know, and that's why we had one the ailerons on the right and the elevator on the left, and so
perfect sense.
You know, but then as things improve, there's and again, this argument, we're not going to have a mode 1, mode 2 argument today, because what really works for you, and this is with pinching and thumbs too, whatever really works for you is what you've got to do. If it's not working for you, try something else, and then and if that works for you, then you've done, you know, it's great. There are all sorts of options. So, but I ain't going to buy anything that goes on the end of the sticks anymore.
Oh God,
I'm not going there.
More accessories.
Unless
it's all about the bling and the accessories, isn't it?
But you know, if it's luminescent, I can see it in the night time. That would be kind of cool. You know? Or maybe it's got LEDs on it. You know, that would be kind of cool.
It makes them look like nipples.
There we go. See, we are nerds.
Just some comments in the chat room there. Thumb left, pinch right. That was from Agent K and some other foreign. What's his? I've got to ask him what country he's from.
He's got a little bit of Russian in there, hasn't he? Cyrillic.
Yeah. You were saying, Mark?
I was just going to say one of each is a horrible idea. But yeah, like just agreeing that fly whatever works for you.
Sometimes, Mark,
there was something else I was going to say, but I've completely forgotten.
Sometimes the one of each works because people then, or their brain, recognise that this is, you know, the cyclic on one side and this on the other.
Oh yeah, well that was it.
Thrust on the other side. So I mean, again, we come back to the same point. If that works for you, then go for it. You know,
it's like a hybrid pinch that some people in quads use, like where they sort of curl their finger over the top and put the thumb on it at the same time. So it's a bit of both as well. That's like a thing. Yeah. But yeah, like I started flying mode 2 because I wanted to fly like a helicopter. I wanted a cyclic and a collective essentially. Yeah. And that made more sense to me at the time. But you like what you were saying about the planes earlier with mode 1 makes sense too. We won't talk about mode 3 and mode 4. No. Those guys are just like, wee.
Well, you know, there's a lot of sense to mode 3 and 4 if you're racing. You know, that's another interesting one. But look, again, when you're teaching, if I've done a bit of instructing on, and I find so if I'm getting someone to work fly backwards and then pinch use the say in a collective on this side, is to put your thumb in front of the stick and then just hold it. So once the airplane's walking at that speed, then you can use the yaw to track a path. So when someone's learning to fly, sometimes by limiting their choices, so I'll say, you're just going to freeze that thumb, put it there, squeeze it down and leave it. The airplane's walking forward. Now put it behind the other side, get the airplane walking forward. So we do this thing called walking and yaw. And so for some people, that really develops quickly their idea of how to position the aircraft walking forward and backwards with the aircraft easily.
Interesting.
You know, again, until, and every student's different. So, you know, you come across a person, you watch what they're getting, and so you say, try this, try that. And when they start getting it, then you'll go down that path with them, But as I said, if you've never had lessons flying before, and you've just worked it up from the beginning, you'll eventually work out what works for you. But if you are a self-taught flyer, when you see someone flying well, put your head over their shoulder and have a look what they're doing. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Don't miss
There's
that
a reason.
opportunity to have a look at what their technique is, because in a lot of the aircraft we fly, on the transmitter, you've got a lot of switches. And so I'm keeping other fingers. If I am thumb flying, the reason is I need my fingers to be working the switches at the top. And so, again, I'm a hybrid flyer. In the end, once I use a lot of pinching when I'm doing really, really close-in work or inspections, and thumbs when I'm just grooving around. I can just fly around. So anyway,
a lot of fun.
We weren't going to start this conversation.
No.
We're going to move into our last quick story of the day. Unique have announced their Typhoon H3 drone partnership that's been co-engineered with Leica. So Leica, for those who don't know, they make those kind of laser measurement things and a number of other devices.
It's not Leica?
Leica, however you say it.
I'm just saying.
Leica. It is especially aimed at aerial photographers and cinematographers. The unique Typhoon H3's most noteworthy feature is the Ion L1 Pro camera. Let's have a look. This is a time lapse that they've shot with that drone. Let's just play it one more time because it was a very short clip. Now, I haven't got much on it at the moment in terms of the clips that are available and the information, but still an interesting new product and certainly aimed at the cinematography and aerial photographer part of the market.
Yeah, I think that market is sort of gotten a bit smaller these days. The guys that are doing it are well set up for it. And yeah, it'd be interesting. I know the always pushed by the camera people, I suppose, and that's where that's coming from. It's got to be able to carry a good camera. Anyway, I can say I don't know a lot about that industry.
Yeah. Okay, look, we're coming close to the end of our show, and there's no more news now, as the song says, and we're just going to go straight into Explore Australia. So let's go and play that clip. As always, the Explore Australia segment, thank you very much to Greg Hilton, who puts this together for us each and every week. The first clip comes from Electronic Images Australia. This is made up of a number of videos that he took over a 4-month period whilst out amongst some islands that make up the Dampier Archipelago, which is off the coast of Dampier in the Pilbara. As always, the channels that we use for Explore Australia, the channel links are in the description for the video. Do go to those channels, check them out, say hello, tell them you saw their video here and you want to subscribe to their channel. I'm sure they'll appreciate it. This one was shot on a Phantom 4 Pro. For the non-drone related content, he used a Samsung S9 and a Canon 6D, compiled it all on Premiere Pro. Second one today comes from France Roussel, and it's just simply titled Australia by Drone. I don't have any more details about it other than that, but very beautiful footage. You like that one, Victorian? I'm just reading your message in the chat here. Have to have you on one day. I love a lot of those old railway bridge kind of things. One day I want to actually do a couple of the old abandoned railways and kind of simulate a train going across them.
I actually got some the other day, or Tom shot it actually, out near Junee. And they're really interesting looking at, it's basically collapsing, but it's a really nice journey. Follow along the track and imagine the trains that went along it years ago.
Number 3 today, Australian Pioneer Village. It's a heritage-listed open-air museum in Wilberforce within the Hawkesbury region. Built from 1969 to 1970. Owned by Hawkesbury City Council. Wilberforce, I think that's up. It's a place that I want to go and explore myself in the near future. It's close to where my grandfather was when he was a kid. So I want to go and explore up there, have a look at some of the family heritage back there. So Matt Northeast, I don't know where that lighthouse was on the previous clip. Unfortunately, it was very little information about that one, but yeah, unfortunately, I don't know. Have you done much travelling around that part of Australia, John?
Luckily I have actually. I'm only 1 or 2 times, but there's some really, really nice early settlement type places like that along the Hawkesbury, and in various other parts where they've just preserved, what the original cottages were like. Yeah, look at that. That's real nice.
So this is our last clip today from Chili Mocha. Go and check out his channel. It's in the description as well, the link to that. Gazetted in 1892, the West Australian town of Coolgardie. It's got a rich history in the pioneering early days of Western Australia. Gold discovered there in 1892 and kicked off one of the greatest gold rushes in Australian history. So he's just having a quick flight over the town and the surrounding area, showing off the town site and some of the former mine sites. So as we reach the end of the show today, just a quick reminder, if you want to send me something, the email address will come up on the screen just as soon as we finish that. Send it to upload@gregkuhnert.com. I'll put it on the screen very shortly. Certainly would also appreciate you sharing that you watched the show today on your social media, whether it be Twitter, Facebook, or any platform of your choice. Let people know that you're watching. Invite them to come and watch next week, same time. I'd also ask you, please do have a look at some of the back catalogue of the old videos that we've got. It helps us always to get the watch time up and maintain that, so that'd be very much appreciated as well.
Lovely footage today, mate. Some really good stuff, wasn't there?
Yeah, there was a couple of comments from some people there saying that it was one of Greg's better one.
Yeah, we always have to have that stuff in there, from wherever it is in the world, really, because I think, again, just nice to chill and sit back and watch some really, really well done footage. And there's so much out there, great stuff. People are flying really well and shooting great stuff.
Yeah, I'm just reading over here. I wonder what keeps that town alive now. Don't know. It's a historical town is pretty much all I got from some of the notes that I read there.
Maybe they're all flying drones.
Maybe they are. So we're reaching the end of the show. And again, just a reminder, please do follow us and share some stuff on social media. That would be very much appreciated. If you do want to send something, that's where you send it to.
Yeah.
And over here, our postal address, if you've got anything physical, 5/127 Princess Highway, Sylvania. And I hear your beautiful wife calling in the background, John, so that means It's time to call it for today.
Yep, we're there. See you later, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you for watching.
Bye
See
for
you
now.
next time. After the show today, I'm not going to be in Discord. I will post a brief link in there to the video place where John and Mark came in today. So instead of doing Discord, I'm going to invite anyone who wants to come say hello to come and join us in that video chat room. But see you next time. Bye for now.